Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining the first conversation in our Companies Growing Companies series. It's really exciting. Companies Growing Companies is a collaboration between Health Cities and Invest Alberta. I'm Lynette Tremblay, the Vice President of Corporate Affairs with Invest Alberta, and I'll be today's moderator. Health Cities is a Canadian not-for-profit corporation that works with clinicians, innovators, charity organizations, and companies to develop models of care that drive better health outcomes and economic growth in the health sector. And Invest Alberta is a crown corporation created by the government of Alberta, focused on attracting investment and jobs and capital dollars into Alberta and Alberta companies. So we work really well together to provide tailored support to companies, investors, and major new projects. We also break down barriers so investors and businesses can start up, scale up, and succeed without limits, and essentially make sure that Alberta is the best place to grow a business. So why we made Companies Growing Companies is supporting health innovation companies by connecting you with businesses that offer services in this sector is something that we thought would be a really important value add to our already growing life sciences ecosystem, and showcasing also from an Invest Alberta perspective what Alberta has for companies to learn, scale, and succeed, and also what we have that are assets to global investors. Building pathways as well for success to companies is really critical. Now, at this point, you'll probably see a poll launch on your screen. We want to get a sense of who our attendees are today, what stage your company is at, and I'll just let everybody fill that out while I tell you a little bit about what we hope you'll learn today. So we hope you'll learn how to navigate regulatory requirements, branding and marketing, which I know I hear a lot of companies have questions about, how to enter new markets. So that's of real interest to Invest Alberta, and because we have offices all over the world, how to prepare to grow lots of companies in that scaling stage, and how to ensure visibility of your company or your product, as well as building a supportive network. We certainly have a collaborative business community in Alberta, and that's something that a lot of companies find value in. So at this point, I'll introduce our panel members here and basically let them take over the show from here. So today we're joined by Josh Abbott, Chris Parker, and Joey Indu at Tangent Design Engineering. Tangent is known for leveraging engineering for innovation that creates great product, changes the world, and enriches lives. That's a pretty lofty purpose, guys. They're going to give us a 20 to 30 minute presentation on all of that and basically how you can find success in product development. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of that. So as we go along and the presentation goes along, please feel free to put your questions into the Q&A function, and we'll get to them after the presentation. And so I'm just going to hand it off to Joey now, and he's going to share the presentation and kick things off.
So we'll go ahead and get started. So first off, we'll welcome everyone on the call. As Lynette said, I'm Joey Indu. I'm a product commercialization expert for Tangent Services, and I'm joined by Josh Abbott and Chris Parker. We'll hear from them both a little bit later. They're both partners at Tangent Design Engineering. So Tangent is a product design and engineering firm, and today, as a way to introduce ourselves to you guys, we put together this talk to share some of the wisdom we've gained over the past 16 years in the market, especially around the proper process to follow and taking an idea from concept to the marketplace. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. And we've seen that while every product is different, there's really a common sequence of events that every product design needs to go through, and a common set of challenges as well. So today's focus will be to outline a proven and proprietary 4-phase system to ensure a quality launch as well as a successful product lifespan. But before we do that, let's just talk about who is Tangent. So Tangent is a Calgary, Alberta-based business in its 16th year of operation with over 400 developed products. We've got a high-functioning team of over 30 engineering product designers with more than 325 years of experience. And so here's the team. Don't mind the Lego folks at the bottom, as engineers sometimes are. These guys are a little camera shy. But what's unique about this team is that it's formed to cover a full range of necessary skill sets to help our clients get into the market. So that's business, that's science, that's engineering, that's technology backgrounds, as well as a wide range of experience in the industry and a wide scope of disciplines, not just in electronics and firmware and software and mechanical skills, but also with business, with strategy, sales, instructional design, and project management. Okay, so this combination allows us to run 30 concurrent projects simultaneously. And additionally, we've been awarded 36 patents. We're, of course, ISO certified, and we even have manufacturing capabilities in-house to help you get your product to scale smoothly. So again, part of what's made Tangent so successful over the past 16 years is codifying what we do into a repeatable process that at the highest level can be broken down into 4 main phases of execution. But before we get into the how of that process, let me explain why it's critical to have that process to follow in the first place. So as I'm sure you already know, over the past 5 years, the medical device industry has done pretty well, better than average, in fact. I mean, you've got a strong compound annual growth rate, really good EV to EBITDA ratios. Even with COVID, the outlook for the next 2 years is super healthy for both devices and for software and new technology developments. But there is a sobering reality too, because there's another metric that's also way above industry average, and it's that over 75% of medical device companies fail, and even more never make it to market in the first place. And the research gives a litany of reasons that cause such a high failure rate. So that's things like a poor match of the solution to the market needs, improper testing procedures, regulatory concerns, gaps in team skill set, technology gaps, lack of quality control, lack of supply chain control. There's a myriad of reasons. But at the end of the day, what's underneath all of that is that the leaders of new medical device companies simply don't have a framework to understand all the issues that they need to be on the lookout for. And so over the past 16 years, we've seen all of this, and we've actually built a system to help you address these issues before they cripple your development and long-term success. So we call that the Tangent Framework. Now, this process de-risks technology development through a number of decision points and design checks that focus on ensuring strong client communication prioritized throughout the product development process so that your ideas can actually become a reality. This framework's been the focus of our internal development since 2005. It's a combination of learnings from some key questions, not just from the design process, but also from reflection during lifecycle management on what we would have done differently, knowing what we know now. So that's questions like, what did we do that worked? How can we repeat it, enhance it, and accelerate it? What were the mistakes that were made, and how can we anticipate, correct, and defend ourselves and our clients from those mistakes in the future through process? And then once we've completed a project, we ask, what would we have done differently knowing what we know now? And this last question is really the big one because it reveals hidden efficiencies, procedures, and processes that only come from having multiple successful products in the marketplace for over a long lifetime. And so the result is an iterative process that's over 400 steps and checkpoints to ensure we help our clients build well-designed products that bring true value to the end user. So for example, this is a snapshot of just a portion of our concept phase framework. Each one of these blocks is where the magic actually happens because each block contains a discrete critical execution task with its own set of directions and goals. Now, of course, this detail is way beyond the scope of today's presentation, so let's zoom back out and take a look at the highest level. And again, here's the stages. So you start off with research and discovery, and we're going to talk about that here in detail in just a little bit. Okay, but then you go into phase 1 where your product starts to take some form. And then in phase 2, you start driving towards actual functionality and having a device in hand. Stage 3, you get ready to deliver. And then stage 4, which is not on the chart, is manufacturing. We do support that. We just don't have time to talk about it today. Okay, so this approach ensures that we ask the right questions at the right time, that we take the right steps in the right sequence, and we do it in a process that's easy to understand, and it's really low impact for our clients because we carry the burden of it, and it provides powerful results. So let's walk through it. So during research and discovery, a core goal is to define your product value landscape. See, this phase is critical because before you can go into phases 1 through 4, there's some background work that we really encourage. And so today, we've actually put together a thinking tool that we're going to walk through with you right now. So in the previous emails, hopefully you have it, there's a worksheet that was sent out to you. So if you've got it, grab it. If you don't have it in front of you, that's okay. Just grab a pen and some paper, and we'll walk you through, and you can follow along, and you can fill in the details a little bit later. So go ahead and do that. And as you grab the pen and paper, what we're going to do is map out, like we said, this product value landscape, which is a visual tool to help you see where you are, but also it helps to identify where you should focus your work and your iteration to drive yourself and set yourself up for a successful product design process and launch it to the market. So we're going to evaluate your current situation in sort of 4 key zones. The first is to look at your marketplace. So that's, who are you going to serve? And these are questions like, how big is my market? Is my market growing? Is it shrinking? Is it flat? And from an awareness standpoint, it's things like, how aware is the market of the problem that I'm trying to solve? How aware is the market of the solutions that already exist? Is my market actually even paying for solutions to this problem? And then in terms of access, I'm wanting to understand, can I easily access the key players in the market? Do I know who they are? Do I know how to reach them? And then also I want to look at the buying process. Is it simple? How does my market purchase? Is it complex? Does it have multiple stakeholders? Do different people own the pain than own the purse, right? I need to ask these questions and really understand that so I know how my market behaves. And then when I consider all these questions, I'm going to rate the opportunity in my marketplace on a scale from 1 to 10 and be really honest with myself here. And then from there, we want to look at value. How much can we actually help? See, this is important because obviously the value that you bring to the marketplace is directly tied to the value of your company. So there's 3 areas, and the first one's impact. It's how much change am I going to be able to create with my solution? Are we looking at incremental improvements, or is it a step change into a new reality? Am I addressing elective benefits versus critical procedures? Are we looking at prevention versus cure? I really want to evaluate honestly the impact that my new tech, my new solution can provide. Then there's the issue of clarity, right? So how easily is my solution understood by my market? Can the value be readily seen and demonstrated, or does it require special education, special training to be able to extract value from my solution? And then the last area, this is one that actually doesn't often get a lot of attention, is confidence. To what degree can I help my market to feel that success is likely? To what degree can I reduce the time and the effort it takes for my market to reach successful outcomes, and how can I prove it? And then after I think about all these things, same thing, I want to rate myself on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of value. And then after that, let's make a little pivot. Let's switch gears. Let's look at feasibility. So do I have a core technology solution that's difficult to replicate and to copy? Do I have a really strong understanding of the patent landscape to create barriers to entry for my competition? And actually, do I even know if I can operate? Am I sure that my technology doesn't infringe? From a team standpoint, do I have a multidisciplinary technology team that's got a proven track record of successfully designing products and getting them to market? Do I have a robust and proven technology development plan to create, to identify, to test, and to select the technology my product requires so that I don't end up going to market and then having critical issues later due to lack of testing? And this is one of the key issues cited in all of the research for why many medical device companies fail. And then the last one is a really kind of the big albatross, which is, to what degree do I understand and to what degree do I have control over my supply chain? Will I be able to effectively scale without blowing up my economics? Can I scale up my product when the time is right? And then same thing, you want to rate yourself from 1 to 10. And then the last one is sort of, what am I going to build? What's my core product actually going to be? Have I identified the potential product and features and identified my minimum viable product? Do I have a solution that's been prototyped and proven effective? This is a biggie, right? With market fit. Have I actually tested my product embodiment or prototype with members in the marketplace? And to what degree did the market feel that my product addressed its needs? And then to what degree have I validated all of my assumptions and tested my product for usability? And then same thing, score myself 1 to 10. So once I've done all this, here's what you do with your scores. So on the feasibility side, you add up your scores for core tech and core product. And so you get something between 2 and 20, and you divide that by 4. You do the same thing for opportunity with market and value. Add them up, divide by 4. That gives you scales of 0 to or 1 to 5 for both of those, and you plot them on this chart. And so with these colors, these colors don't indicate the potential success of your product. That's not what they're for, nor do they indicate whether you should or shouldn't go forward. Rather, they're really an indication of your readiness, right? They're your readiness to proceed into the next phases of product development. So for example, imagine you had really high opportunity scores and really low feasibility scores. Okay, well then that's a signal that you should look at your team, you should look at your tech, you should look at your design specs before you roll into product build out. Maybe the opposite's true. Maybe you have really high feasibility and low opportunity scores, and that's okay too. But then what you want to do is look at market analysis. You want to look at your solution space. How can I create more value before you proceed, right? So what this tool does is it helps you focus your iterative thinking. You want to run this tool multiple times. Every time you make a decision, every time you make a change, run this sequence again, because it'll help you understand where to focus to have the largest payoff. And once you're in a good spot, you can proceed into phase one.
Great. Thank you, Joey, and thank you, Health Cities, for allowing us to participate today. I'd like to show a few slides reviewing the 3 key design phases and provide some case studies that illustrate the kinds of work that's done in these phases. As many of you know, technology and product development can be challenging, and it's inherently a strategic process where you're looking to get alignment between your core development activities and your business activities. As Joey mentioned earlier, a well-executed product answers the right questions at the right times, but it's also the responsibility of your technical team to arm your company with the assets that you need to help validate the market and value proposition and build interest from current or future investors. So all design phases are important, but the concept phase is particularly important because it sets the table for all of your development work to come. At the end of this phase, you should have decided on the core technology you're going to use and have it incorporated in a product design that's representative of where you want to go. The image here on the right shows, from a product perspective, a few sketches of different ways that this particular product could be realized. So the concept phase is a fun and creative phase in many ways. It allows you to explore the look and feel of your product and explore how users are going to interact with it. The main goal is to implement your technology in a product that people really want to use, not just have to use. Also part of phase one is a simulation or product embodiment phase, where a simplified representation or a benchtop model or even a complex computational simulation, such as the one in the top right, allows you to better improve your understanding and allow fast iterations and evaluation of your technology. We can learn more about this part of phase one in our first case study to follow here. So this slide and the next slide show how we advance the technology and product efforts for one of our customers, 42 Health Sensors, who's designing a wearable product that fits on your ear. And I want to mention here that we should always be looking forward to the vision of where our product needs to go. But as shown on the bottom images, there's often initial efforts to replicate or show your core technology first. And they can be very rudimentary, they can be very, very visually unappealing, but it's a really valuable phase to make sure you've got your project going in the right direction. So, 42 Health Sensors came to us with their proof of concept prototype shown here. Our first goal was to help them further prove out their technology, as shown in the second image. So we designed a custom development kit. As you can see, there's many wires hanging off this product iteration. There's many concessions that were made on usability and packaging, but it allowed our project team to try out different sensors and gain confidence that we had the right technology in place to get the data that they needed. Once you have that in place, then you can spend more effort on product and packaging, which led to the first fully engineered prototype shown on the right. So phase two, detailed design, is where we say the rubber really meets the road. So it builds on the tech development and the concept you selected in phase one to create your first fully engineered design. We call the first fully engineered design alpha prototypes. You usually build a very low quantity, 1, 2, or 3, and evaluate those prototypes to see how well they meet your specifications. Based on those learnings, the second engineered prototype, called the beta prototype, is designed and built, usually in slightly higher quantities. And this prototype is often useful to show investors, work with end customers, do demonstrations, and help prove out your market validation side. For prototyping, we're fortunate that rapid prototyping technologies have advanced so much in the last 10 years. This allows us to make high quality prototypes relatively inexpensively and very quickly that closely represent the commercial product. Our second case study is for a customer of ours called Yume, who have an eye therapy device for treating dry and overstressed eyes. The three images in the top right are from phase one concept phase. So we did some simulations to evaluate the core performance. We made and tested a number of clay models to refine the shape that interfaces with the eye. And we created industrial design renderings to show the product vision, where we're going. As part of phase two, we created that first fully engineered alpha prototype shown in the bottom left. And you can see that it reflects a number of fit and finish issues that we'd want to address in future iterations, but it's really our first stepping stone to showing the full product iteration, which then translated into the beta prototype in the bottom right, which incorporated lessons learned from that alpha prototype, used better materials, had better fit and finish. And this version was actually used for live testing at the Consumer Electronics Show and received an honorary award for innovation and was featured on the Today Show. So once you've got that usability shown and your product features are proven and fixed, you're ready to transition into phase three, which we call design for manufacturing. So phase three is where we're making design refinements to suit high volume manufacturing methods. So we're getting ready to produce high volume, and we're selecting the manufacturers that you're going to do that with. In earlier phases one and two, you're still thinking about manufacturing considerations, but there's always additional effort required in phase three to optimize the design once you've selected a manufacturer. Case study for phase three is a customer of ours called Lightbook, which has a product here that's for treating seasonal affective disorder or jet lag. We did the design and build of the first 1,000 units in our facility and then got them set up with an overseas contract manufacturer to build units in batches of 10,000. You're on mute there, Joey, but over to you.
I sure am. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for taking us through phases 1 through 3. So just in quick summary, what have we seen so far? Right? We've seen there's 4 phases to move through, right? And each of these phases is critical to the overall process and success of your product. And each phase depends on the success of the previous phases. So you kind of have to get things right, and you kind of have to get them right just from the start. And so as a company, we're able to join with our clients at any point in this process, right? We're happy to support late cycle development and execution by being your full team or supplementing what you're already doing. We also know that teams come with a variety of capabilities and skill sets. So we're able to round out your team or provide capabilities that you don't have in-house. But we also know that many on the call today are at phase 0 and not really sure how to progress forward. And so it's like, well, what do I do? What can I do? And that's why we provided the product value landscape in the first place. It's a tool set to help you evaluate your strengths, your growth areas, and your dangers as you push to go through phases 1, 2, 3, and 4 to bring your product to market. I mean, your strengths are going to be the areas that catapult you forward in your journey. Now, these are the areas that you like to work on. These are the areas where you have a competitive advantage. You're going to naturally gravitate towards them because you already have the know-how, you have the capabilities, you have the tools, you have the teams necessary to be successful. The areas for growth are topics where you maybe rated yourself average. And these are skill sets and market conditions that with some focus and some work, some effort, some strategy, you'll be able to turn these into strengths, right? But you just got to pay close attention because if you don't, it can become liability. So with focused effort, you can grow in these areas and turn them into strengths. But the real issue is the dangers, right? Because these are the areas where you need to add all new capabilities to your efforts. This is hard because these areas of dangers, these are areas where there's a serious deficiency, whether in your team, your core competency, somewhere in your framework, there's something missing. And for the most part, these are not areas in which iteration and focus will do much to improve. Rather, to address them, you need a step change. You need to do new hires, bring in new tech, do more research, more development, something along those lines. The main takeaway is just you can't ignore these issues because we've seen it before. Many young companies will drive forward with the hope that their strengths and their momentum and their sort of will carry the day. It just doesn't work though. It's precisely because most medical device companies don't have an effective and a safe way to address the obvious and frankly, the hidden dangers that they face, that 75% of medical device companies fail. And again, even more never make it to market. I mean, let that sink in. Most companies are not able to get this right. And so avoiding this situation is the entire point of having a phase zero. It's the reason why we created the product value landscape tool to help you out of this situation and make execution on stages 1 through 4 go much more smoothly. So just don't avoid the dangers as you move forward. And so if you're open to it, let me suggest a way you can work with Tangent using our team, using our experience, using our process to rapidly and successfully bring your product to market, build a thriving business around it, and do it without stepping into the common pitfalls that crumble most medical device companies and without having to commit to all 4 phases right from the start. So here's how we do it. It's called the Tangent Framework Minimum Viable Concept. It's part of our framework. It's a standardized sequence of questions, actions, and deliverables that we follow together to drive you towards the top right of the product value landscape by driving the process for you, by adding core capabilities to your team, by strategically adding more value to your solution set and your technology stack, by uncovering deeper access into your market, by backing you with solid execution and know-how around regulatory issues, especially, all while giving you access to resources and capabilities that you haven't had before. So what that means is virtually overnight, you can put 325 years of experience with the know-how of over 400 successfully designed products to work for you without the project management headaches that entails, and for a fraction of the time, the complexity, and the cost it would take to do it yourself. Here's how that works. We work with your team to create a defined set of deliverables, helping you to define and refine your product value landscape so that both you and we know exactly what we are building together, and that what we're building is something the market wants to spend money on to help solve a problem that it faces. I mean, the worst mistakes are the ones where there's an improper alignment between what you want to sell and really what the market wants to buy. And so this first step is to prevent that from happening. And then now we'll also create a data sheet and a product embodiment that condenses your thoughts into an easy to understand format that demonstrates the value of what you're selling so that you can share your vision, you can use it for raising more capital, for demonstrations, to get market feedback, et cetera. And we'll build you out a detailed, customized development plan so that you understand the right process to progress through phases 1 through 4 for your solution and your team. And so this will equip you with a streamlined path forward while substantially reducing your risk. So our team is here to support you. So if what we've shared today is helpful, and I invite you to click on the link that we're going to put in the chat here in just a second, or you can go to tangentservices.com/MVC for minimum viable concept and answer the 60-second survey that's there. Also, so that you know, Innovates Alberta has a micro voucher that you can apply for, where they contribute. It basically allows you to leverage cash, right? So they provide these vouchers for companies like you to be able to contract and leverage your cash to get the skill sets that you need. I believe they pitch in up to $10,000 with the entrepreneur putting in about 30% themselves. So with that, I think we're good. Let's open it up for some questions.
Great, thanks, guys. That was great. I love that. And honestly, I'm just going to spotlight you there, Joey. Your product value landscape tool is fascinating. I talk to a lot of companies and innovators that I think would really find that helpful in the stages that they're at. So I'm curious, before we launch into the Q&A, so we'll launch a poll one more time for folks. But guys, I'm curious, the UME device for tired and dry eyes, did that come about as a result of COVID and increased screen time, or was that pre-COVID?
No, that was pre-COVID. It was just the pains of the entrepreneur that came up with the idea. So he was just tired of putting a wet compress on his face all the time and decided there has to be a better way, and there was. So we helped him with that. I just want to say too, I don't know if it was on my plate, but the Tangent Services /MVC doesn't actually do anything yet. So I apologize for that. So follow the link that Joy put in the chat.
Nice.
And we'll get it was probably on me to set that up, so my bad.
No worries.
Yeah.
I'll start web developing in the background.
Yeah, we'll get this.
We'll do it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's all very fascinating. I thought, that product, particularly if it didn't start before, because of COVID, it obviously, I think, became even more interesting for the market post COVID as all.
Oh yeah, screen time's way up.
Yeah. And so I see we just ended the poll. So we've got a lot of folks that are wanting to do business internationally but haven't yet started. So that's really interesting too as we go along in the Q&A. And the last thing, I don't want to make this about COVID, but I just have a quick question for all of you. As you've been working with companies, has that changed anything in the last, say, year and a half? Have you seen any major shifts in the market or just things that you're doing differently with companies now?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I'm putting you on the spot, obviously.
Yeah, no, I mean, from our perspective, internally, things haven't changed a ton. And a lot of our clients were already remote anyway, so we were already kind of doing work this way. In our business, there's a certain element of, it's a trust relationship. Like our clients need to trust that we can actually get stuff done. So that sort of interaction is kind of hard to establish remotely, I find. So we've been trying to do more in-person meetings lately, but yeah, when it comes to most of 80% of what we do, it's fine doing it online. The one sort of exception there is prototyping. So when you've got 4 or 5 different teams actually putting something together, we learned the hard way. It's almost impossible to have those teams all over the place because, who's got this board and who's got this thing and is that the newest version? And it's like, okay, it's just a nightmare. But so we do that stuff in office. Other than that, it's kind of been business as usual for us. There was a short period of time where we were super focused on building ventilators with a whole bunch of people in Alberta that were super focused on that, but that's all kind of stabilized now, so it's all good.
Josh, you unmuted yourself. Did you have something to add before we jump into some of the questions?
Oh, I wanted to mention the ventilator push, which was obviously a big concern in Alberta early in 2020, and luckily, for the most part, we've not needed to have crazy ICU numbers and ventilators. So, but it was an interesting time as we all kind of tried to wrap our heads around what was this pandemic gonna be like and how would we cope.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it was nice to see a number of healthcare professionals and companies sort of pivot and come up with new innovations and inventions to help with everything. So I hope we keep that kind of momentum going. And I think Alberta was really well positioned in the sense of a jurisdiction that has the ability to just mobilize quickly around things. So that's certainly what I saw from my vantage point, talking to a number of companies and innovators. So tell us a little bit about the nature of the companies that you guys work with. Do you work with companies that are interested in working internationally, that do work internationally? Do they mostly focus on the Canadian, North American market? What are some of or is it really a mixed bag? Just tell us a little bit about, you mentioned a few of them, but some of what you do and help companies with there.
Yeah, we work with varied companies. Some companies choose to start, and develop and roll out into the US first. Some here in Canada. It depends on their strategy and their product specifically. But we work with customers that are quite early stage. Perhaps they don't even have a working prototype yet, but they've got a market need or a market problem identified. And in other cases, we might work with people like the 42 Health Sensors Group, who might be, incubating technology in a university, but needing help with some of the commercialization and final R&D activities. So, we can really jump in at a number of different points in the maturing of a product. And, we can really just support the team you already have in place and help accelerate things.
Most of the industrial work we do is sort of geographically positioned for the Alberta, the Alberta market, Saskatchewan, BC, things like that. The consumer goods, anything medical device related, they're all targeting larger markets. I mean, the Canadian market's small. So for those companies, it is like by definition, international work.
So I'm gonna throw a question at you that I think is really interesting here that came in the chat. What are some of the most common types of mistakes you've seen? You mentioned the failure rate, Joey, but so what are some of the most common types of mistakes you've seen product execution wise and market value creation wise?
I'll start on the market side, Chris, is some of the things that often happen with engineers or technically focused teams is that they're doing too much development work without engaging their market. So, there's many things you can do as early as phase 0 to create good assets to go to your customers and get their feedback to confirm whether you're on the right track. So, it could be as simple as renderings. There could be simulations and those kinds of things. Looks like prototypes. There's lots of things that we can create that can help you engage your market early and get that buy-in and traction so that we know we're on the right track, or if we're not, we make those corrections early to your feature set. On the product execution wise, there's lots of things to talk about there. Things like, perhaps selecting the wrong technology early on in your product, which might have limitations that you weren't aware of until later on. One of the things that's important these days is obviously the supply chain disruption issues we've had with the pandemic. So, if you've got a product that has a lot of off-the-shelf components integrated into it, you're relying on, manufacturers and their supply chain meeting your needs. So getting your hands on the product might be difficult, or even, if you're buying those off-the-shelf components, maybe they change a feature and that impacts your product. It could be as simple as, a headphone jack on a display, moving locations and no longer integrating well with your product, for example. So, there's a number of things that can happen, and you obviously need to make a smart choice early on the off-the-shelf discussion on, what do you want to do custom, what do you want to take design control over, and what do you want to use and just buy from an existing supplier.
So Josh, I'm going to ask you to draw on that a little bit, because actually the next question I was going to throw at you was about how to mitigate supply chain risks. So maybe we can just continue on that train there. Then the next attendee was asking, how do you suggest early stage companies manage those supply chain risks, especially right now? And then are there steps that they can take to minimize those risks early on from a product development standpoint?
Yeah, it's a good question. Early stage companies, mitigate. It's hard to really know what you need for a supply chain until you've gone down the road a fair ways. But, when you have a good idea of what it is you want to do, we've just ended up tiering things out. So we've got, multiple tiers. We take sort of a 3-tier approach to actually mitigating supply chain risk. So if we can buy it, we buy it. If we can't buy it, we buy it and then cancel it later. And then, if there's an easy sort of cross-reference we can do, we'll do that, make the change, update the design. If there's, a cross-reference that we can do that requires design rework, then that's sort of like the least desirable sort of thing that we want to do, but that is sort of the Hail Mary type approach. And if it's, if there is just one component and you're stuck with one component, I guess that's something early stage companies can do, is you can, on the technology side, you can really take a look at what it is you're relying on. And if it's one company that sells like one particular sensor, we had a company, we designed an industrial flow sensor, and like the first thing we did with them was got them to buy like 1,000 chips from this manufacturer, because, they're not super expensive, but not having them kills their company. So, you just kind of need sort of that lens looking forward with everything associated with supply chain stuff.
Yeah, I was going to, because Josh mentioned earlier, one of the mistakes being picking the wrong technology. So any mitigation tactics on that, anything that you advise companies to do to get the right one, knowing that you're going to make some mistakes?
Yeah, breadboarding, like that's that simulation phase we talked about, like actually getting really early embodiments of your product so you can actually test it. you can actually show it to somebody who's in the market and actually figure out if somebody really cares. So that's, and can it do what people really care about? That's sort of that's sort of phase one concept phase stuff.
Mm-hmm. I'll go to the next question here. I have a lot of my own, but I'll keep it to the attendee questions. So we've got a question. A key part of getting the product value landscape right is the self-evaluation and giving points in each section. So I have a feeling I know where this is going. Is there a rubric that early stage companies can use to self-evaluate? How does Tangent suggest early stage innovators give those points to themselves to keep it realistic and maybe to keep it honest?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on that, Joey?
I do.
Okay.
I think the thing you want to do when using this tool is it's the usefulness of the tool is not the point in time in which you evaluate, but creating a slope by doing the tool multiple times. Because what we don't want to do is convey this tool as if it's like a hard and fast number. Like there's a, if I have this much, if my market is this size, then it's this number. If it's this size, then it's that number. It's not really that. It's a feel for, as you ask these questions, how strong am I in this area? So for example, let's look at market penetration. Do I actually know who I'm selling to truly? Have I called them? Can I actually reach them? Do they care about the problem that I'm trying to solve, and to what degree? Is it easy for me to get meetings about that? Same thing with value. You actually have to put in some work. You self-evaluate, but you self-evaluate and then you try it again by putting in some work and doing the due diligence of the research for it. You evaluate yourself again. And so the whole point where the tool becomes effective is it points out areas in which you don't have confidence. So maybe I'm strong in this area and I don't know it, or maybe I'm actually not strong in this area. Either way, I now start focusing my iteration in that area, improve, and reevaluate myself. And so what I'm doing is zigzagging up that product value landscape until I get to somewhere in the green area. And then when I'm in the green area, I can confidently progress into phases 1 through 4, knowing that I've done the background work necessary to set myself up for success. And companies just don't do that, not because they're unwilling to, but because they don't know what they should be looking at. They just don't know where to focus. And this helps attenuate that focus.
Mm-hmm.
Did that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. So we talked a lot about early stage companies. I'm wondering if we can speak, because we have a couple of companies that mentioned they're in the scaling stage. So do you work a lot with companies who've gone through that proof of concept? And so Joey, into your phase 2, 3, and say you're coming in at that stage. What are, I'm going to go back to that mistakes question. What are some of the mistakes that you see with companies who've gotten pretty far successfully to the point they want to scale, maybe they want to enter new markets? What are some of the mistakes that you tend to see, or what are the points of intervention that you tend to try to get in with them on?
Yeah, those companies tend to at least have done it once, or they've done a portion of the product already. So it depends obviously on the exact situation. But we see, we do occasionally see some issues with pacing where people want to go super quick because they have a deadline. They've got an investor thing coming up, like it's, we got to run, and it's, okay, there's a time to run and there's a time, to get ready and walk and then start running. So, I think, the pace of innovation at times can be a little chaotic with somebody that's in a scale-up phase. So just, that's where our process actually really helps us, because, we've got all these sort of checkpoints that it doesn't slow it down to the point of not getting stuff done, but it slows it down in a way that it's manageable for everybody. So, there's good knowledge transfer, there's good communication. Everybody knows what's happening, when it's happening, why it's happening. So that's one of the big things we see, I think, with companies that have a bit more experience and maybe, they've got a product out there already, or half a product, or, they've done a prototype. And we can do, we jump in, we frequently just jump in and jump out of product development cycles with people too. You might be up against a deadline and you need, a team like us to come in and do, a certain portion of a design, and, okay, great. We'll just come in, we'll do it. See you later. You guys are off to the races. So yeah, but we do like to be long-term partners as well, all the way through to manufacturing.
just to add to that briefly, I think, when we see a product that's well down the development pathway, obviously, part of product development is an inherently creative process. There's a lot of trade-offs and strategic decisions that you're making along the way. So when we come in fresh, we can kind of do an audit or kind of see where we see as the strengths or weaknesses of the product. And that's, one of the key things that a technical team really needs to do to the business leaders is make sure they're aware of what the strengths and weaknesses of their product is. Because in some cases we've gotten involved and there wasn't that awareness. And so they weren't as strongly positioned as they thought they were, which then, you don't want to go back in phases if you can avoid it, obviously. So, there's just so many decisions. You just want to make sure that the right people know and that everybody's clear on what the strengths are for your product and what the weaknesses might be.
Yeah, it comes back to that. I think that realism and honesty and self-assessment piece that came up earlier. So we've talked a lot about what you guys bring to your clients and your partners. Maybe we'll flip the coin a little bit and ask you what do you need your clients and partners and the companies to bring to you? So what is it you need them to bring to the project? What makes them ready and really successful when they come to you?
A lot of our clients, particularly in the medical space, might be, cardiologists or orthopedic surgeons. So they're subject matter experts in their field. So they really understand the problem space really well. So that's one thing that we really rely on them to bring is that core expertise and the ability to understand whether we're on the right track with a given solution. So, there's a lot of internal work. Obviously, you always want to go outside the project team frequently to get that validation, but as well, during development, you need that quick feedback internally as to how things are going. So a customer like that obviously knows the problem space is really good at helping inform our product team as we're going.
But they can bring everything from like a napkin sketch to a problem statement to, just, hey, this thing's bugging me, or, a full product spec. We can work with basically anybody, and we have worked with basically everybody, like all stages of companies. So we're pretty flexible.
That's great. There was a question started in the chat, but it just ended up with "How do you?" So that's really open.
Yes, that is the question. Yes, how do you? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're still like, spoiler alert, we're still learning. So that's how we do it, I guess. We're just continually learning.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess anything, any pieces of wisdom, because you've been obviously doing this for a long time, you've seen a lot. If we just left you, we'll take inspiration from that open-ended question. And, anything that you have learned that you just kind of want to pass on to companies?
Well, I guess in the spirit of the ecosystem, I think I've learned there's a ton of really interesting and capable companies, both on the service provider side, great government support, really interesting startups, in Alberta. Like, we have a super vibrant tech community here, and it seems to be growing and trending in the right direction. So, we've been doing this for a long time. And even just recently, it seems to have really picked up, I think, like in terms of momentum. I think it's very well supported. Everybody's kind of looking for what's next for Alberta. And, people have actually been taking action and making moves to do what's next for Alberta for many years now. So there's quite a lot going on in the space. So it's, I just would encourage people to attend startup events and, go ahead and be part of the community and the ecosystem. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. I definitely hear from some companies that one of their challenges is just knowing what's out there in the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. The events and just really putting yourself out there can be helpful, because I do find that there's companies like you and all kinds of companies that are eager to share their knowledge and partner and work together. It's a real unique asset, I think, that Alberta has.
I'm 50-50 on capital right now. I'm sort of optimistic, but not super optimistic about capital, access to capital for Alberta companies. We see quite a lot of government funding, which is great, but there's nothing like convincing somebody to write a check to know that, you're on the right trajectory with your company. So.
Yeah. Josh?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of factors. So, fundamentally, we're happy if you want to reach out to us, and Chris and I and Joey, we can jump on a call and learn specifically what you're up to. There's sometimes within an hour we can provide some tips that might save you some headache. Perhaps we have to dig a little deeper, but we've done a number of these projects and learned so much that we can hopefully prevent people out there from making the mistakes and making the course corrections as small as possible, because doing a product development pathway is not a straight line from A to B. There are corrections. It's just inherent in the process. You are learning as you're going, so you just want to make those course corrections as small as possible, so that you can implement them as quickly as possible to get on and your product mature.
And so how do you decide who to work with? There's a question in the chat about, is it specific to medtech, or do you have clients beyond?
Everybody.
Everybody who comes to
you. We're not a huge company. Like, we've got 30 engineers, so we like to keep people busy. We've got active projects right now in the clean tech space. We're doing a lot of industrial sensing systems. We're doing a ton of IoT and wireless right now. And then also, of course, the medical device space, which, is certainly something we pride ourselves about, being able to do, but it's only ever about 25% of our project portfolio at any given time. So, there's quite a lot of other stuff going on. And yeah, we, it's sometimes hard to work with really early stage companies. Like, there is a stage that's sort of too early, and that's sort of where Joey's tool kind of helps you figure out, where you need to go. Maybe you need to spend some time, even just, figuring out exactly, your right approach to the market. Like, if somebody comes to us right away and says, "Hey, I want you to build this for me," it's like, okay, well, it's a long road. So, let's make sure we're on the right track. But yeah, no, I'd say, for the most part, we're open to working with anybody.
Great. Well, I see we're running up on time.
Even large enterprises. Like, we've worked with a lot of large enterprises lately, and I have to say they're incredibly slow and really frustrating sometimes. But it's it's something we're getting better at working with too. So yeah.
A lot of large enterprises are looking at new product development these days. So
oh yeah, huge. Yeah.
Well, and we can provide some nimbleness that they inherently don't have. So, that's one of our advantages is we're small and nimble.
If you can't be nimble, pay for nimble.
Yeah, there you go.
That's exactly right. Oh, I got to get a t-shirt like that. Write that down. Yeah.
So, I mean, that'll be my last little nugget of wisdom. Maybe for the last couple of minutes we've got, I'll just do a little roundtable with each of you and just ask you for some final thoughts. There was a question posed earlier if you wanted to cover, how you as Tangent overcame any market challenges yourself, or just any final thoughts you have for some of our participants. Why don't we start with Joey, and then I'll work my way around my screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just doing the hard work, the manual work of understanding your market. The biggest danger with any company, not just in medical device, but with any company at all, is progressing in a black box, kind of turtling up, building something, and then kind of getting this groupthink where you're really sort of jazzing yourself up. This is what the market wants, whether it's a product or service, whatever we're offering, and then getting out there and figuring out that this is not at all what the market wants. And so now, as Josh was saying earlier, you're making huge pivots because you've waited too long to figure that out. And so the earlier you can do the uncomfortable work of talking to people and even being willing to risk sharing what you're trying to do, because I know a lot of times you've got some kind of cutting edge technology that you want to keep private, but finding ways to protect that and getting that market feedback makes your iteration so much more intelligent. And we've had to do that internally, and we recommend that all of the companies do the same thing.
Great advice. Chris, what about you? Words of wisdom.
If you have a company that's been around for 16 years, don't wait 16 years to do your first webinar. That's all I have to say. That's about it. Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, get your story out. We're pretty bad at it. Like we're engineers, so we focus on problems, and we've been growing the company organically to the size it is today, but we're aimed at long-term growth ourselves, so we're starting to get our story out now. We probably should have done it a lot earlier. I don't know what was our problem, but yeah, that's about it.
No, I mean, that's great advice for companies too. I think they're so busy doing the work, they forget to promote the work, or just don't have time or resources to do it, but it's critically important. So yeah, point well taken. Josh, final words. You get the last word.
Last word, yeah. So I think we've already touched on it, but let your clients tell you where you need to go, and that applies to our business as well. We didn't used to do any in-house manufacturing, and we just were focused on prototyping. And customers said, "That's great, and now I've got a working prototype, but can you support me as I get commercialized and into revenue?" So yeah, listen to your customers. If you think you can provide value to them by making changes in your product or something to suit them, then you need to take a hard look at that and see whether you can do a good job of that. And if you can, then go for it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely great advice. Is sometimes, and even in what I do for a living, where we're promoting investment in Alberta, sometimes we all get caught up in what we really want to sell as opposed to what others want to buy. So always remember the customer and what it is that they want. So I guess just a final word from me is thank you so much to you, Joey, Josh, and Chris, for the work that you do to help grow, but also for being part of this today, and Chris for your rookie foray into the world of webinars.
Yeah,
for making it this
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And just a note to everyone that Joey put a link in the chat. We really encourage you to follow the link, to reach out to one of these three guys and have a chat, because they've got a lot of knowledge to share, and obviously a passion for helping grow companies. So thanks very much to all of you, and thanks for the participants for dialing in.
Thanks, everybody.
So much, Lynette.
Awesome.
Really appreciate it.
Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah.